Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to another webinar from the Society for the Protection of Nature in Israel. I'm Jay Shofet coming to you from Tel Aviv. As usual, every couple of weeks we're here, same bat time, same bat channel. Seriously though, with all kinds of interesting guests from our own staff and like tonight from the environmental policy community in Israel. In fact, a very important member of the environmental policy community in Israel, Ambassador Gideon Behar is with us. Gideon Behar, uh, who is Israel's roving ambassador for climate change, a special envoy, and we will be hearing from him very soon. He's going to be talking about climate tech innovation in Israel, one of the exciting, really, and hopeful bits of news coming out of Israel recently. Um, and not just, very recently, but over the last few years, Israel's been developing a name for itself, and we're happy to be here. But welcome, everybody, to the Society for the Protection of Nature in Israel's webinar series. We'll be doing this. We've been doing this since the onset of COVID. Began in April 2020, and we do these every 2 weeks, more or less. And excited to be with you this evening with a very special webinar. Want to thank all our board chairs and members from all of our affiliate groups in the United States and in Canada and in the UK and in France. Thank you all very much for your time and dedication and investment in our work in protecting biodiversity, first and foremost in Israel, and fighting climate change through nature-based solutions. We have our own climate change innovation. Gideon is familiar with it as well. It's not in the tech sphere so much. It's in the low tech sphere. We are rewilding wetlands. Many of you know, we're turning former agricultural lands, former failing fish ponds into wetland nature reserves, rewilding the swamps that we drained, that Zionism drained over the century for development needs, for our own water needs. But we have a lot of water now. We're desalinating water and we're bringing water back to nature. Maybe we'll talk about that a little bit as well. But tonight we're going to be focusing on the climate tech sector and how that is really will affect the climate change battle across the globe for all of humanity. In our tiny little country with its unique positioning in biodiversity, also happens to be such a center of innovation, not just climate tech innovation, of course, but really one of the countries at the forefront of fighting climate change through science and entrepreneurship. And we'll be hearing about that. Guys, thanks so much. People are joining at a regular rate, still coming in, 80 people already, and more on Facebook, no doubt. Welcome, everybody. We're going to get going within the next minute. Jay Shofet coming to you from Tel Aviv. Thanks so much, all you people already in the chat, letting us know where you're from and some thoughts. Yes, Israel is the green beacon of hope, as Jonathan has written us. Very hopeful stuff going on in Israel. We're going to get to that right now. I think it's about time. I'd like to introduce Gideon and turn the webinar over to him. Gideon will be talking for maybe half an hour or so. Hello, Ambassador. Welcome to our webinar series. I'm coming to you from Tel Aviv. You are, I guess, at your home. Where is that?
Well, it's in Modi'in, a city just between Jerusalem and Tel Aviv.
A big city. I lived there 7 years myself. Good city, well-run city, and growing rapidly. We're fighting to keep the hills around Modi'in wild as possible, but development pressures being what they are in our tiny country. Look, Modi'in's going to be 250,000 people someday.
That's true.
So anyway, thank you very much for being with us here in the evening in Israel. Good morning, good afternoon to everybody around the world. We have people coming to us from Arizona and Syracuse and just all kinds of places all over Sweden and Florida and Modi'in and Baltimore, Toronto, of course, all over Austin, Texas, We're London. So we really have a global audience for you for what is a truly global topic. Why don't you introduce yourself, take it away, and I'll join you at the end and we'll ask a lot of questions.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much, Jay, and hello and shalom to everyone from Modi'in, from Israel. I'm a diplomat at the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs already for the last 28 years. I was ambassador for 5 years in Senegal and a few other African countries. I've served in Tunisia in the 90s, in Berlin, and I've done really a long array of activities at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. In the last 3 years, I'm dealing with climate change and sustainability. And my role is double. One is to present Israel on the international arena, international fora, meetings like the recent COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, to participate in conferences, and to bring Israel a voice into the debate, the global debate of climate change. Another very important aspect of my job is to bring this debate, the international debate, to Israel, and to share the information, understandings, know-how that I hear outside Israel, or our embassies are hearing, or consulates are hearing from what's going on this subject in the world, to bring it back to Israel and to make it part of our decisions making process and Israel's positions and policy on climate change. Now, a very important part of our activity at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is what we call climate innovation, or Israeli innovation in the field of climate change. It can be both in adaptation, like how to adapt to climate change, but also in mitigation, that means mitigating or reducing greenhouse gases emissions. And Israel has a message to the world, a very powerful message to the world in both aspects of mitigation and adaptation. And actually, when you look at Israel and you ask yourself, what is Israel's biggest contribution to this huge and enormous climate crisis? Then it comes in form of solutions, practical solutions, scalable solutions, cheap solutions, solutions that people can apply and use everywhere in the world, either in developing countries or developed countries, just everywhere in the world. And maybe what I will do in the next 20 minutes or so, I'll share with you some of the highlights of the Israelis' activities in the field of climate innovation. I would just want to say at the beginning that climate innovation is not necessarily technology or climate tech. Innovation can come in many forms. It can come in forms from which the Society of the Protection of Nature in Israel does, like protecting nature, rehabilitation of ecosystems, rehabilitation of wetlands, protecting of nature, etc. This is also a sort of innovation. And innovation can come also from civil society in activities that different action groups within the society are doing. Innovation can come also from the academia, from universities, from research, etc. So innovation is quite a broad term, and innovation in the field of climate change is even broader. And just let me show you a few slides. So Israel is actually good in few areas of climate innovation. But I will be speaking, or maybe rather concentrating on five of them. The first one is innovation in the field of agriculture. Now, agriculture is both a source of emissions. It's one of the problems or forces that drives climate change, because the way that we use the land, because the way that we produce animals, or the feed for animals, and many other more things. But it is also threatened by climate change, and climate change is actually threatening food security all around the world. And we can see that Israel is a real and true message to the world in the field of agriculture. So here you can see a few of the things that are done in Israel. Maybe just have a look at what on the picture on the right below. This is where you see drip irrigation. Drip irrigation is a simple system that was developed in Israel some 60 years ago.
Gideon,
Yes?
Gideon, slicha that I interrupt you. We're not seeing your slides.
Okay. Sorry.
Somehow that didn't share.
All right. Do you see the slide now?
No.
Okay.
David, do you have the ability to share there? If
let me see again. Sorry.
Sorry about this, people.
No.
Well, it worked before.
Yeah, it always works when the trial.
Okay, so just let me take a minute and we will fix it.
Thank you, everybody, for all the all the comments in the chats. And yeah, I would just ask you, if you have questions for Gideon for the end of the presentation, put them in the questions and answers. It's easier for us to keep track of them and not the chat feature.
Just a few seconds more and we are...
No problem.
We are there almost. Okay.
Oh,
Okay. Can you see it now?
yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Do you see the second slide now?
Yep. Agriculture.
Agriculture. Okay, wonderful.
Thank you.
So on the right hand below, you can see drip irrigation. Now, drip irrigation is a very simple method of irrigating. And because it's simple, it's very applicable, it's very cheap, and it's very scalable. The problem is that today, most of the agriculture in the world is rain-fed agriculture. In other words, only 5% of all world agriculture is irrigated. And from that, only a small percent is being done by drip irrigation. Most of the irrigation is done by flooding, even in the United States and in very advanced countries. And this is very pity, because not only drip irrigation is more efficient and it gives higher yields, much higher yields, it saves up to 50% of the water used for irrigation. Now, when we are moving now into an era of climate change, where it is becoming more and more difficult to rely on rain, on precipitation, and then we have to strike a new deal with the land, with the weather, with agriculture. And this New Deal is that we are irrigating our products, that we are irrigating our fields. If we want to ensure sustained food supply, a supply that will not be affected by droughts, a supply that will not be affected by severe weather conditions. And drip irrigation is really simple. But there are many more other ways to do agriculture and to adapt agriculture to climate change today, also being developed in Israel, like precise agriculture. This is agriculture in which we use satellites, we use drones, we use remote sensors to measure humidity in the soil, to measure the quantity of chemicals in the soil, etc. We can even put sensors on individual trees and measure how much they need and give each tree its exact supply of minerals, its exact supply of water, not to overflow it with water, not to overflow it with minerals, but also not to give it to minimum quantities of minerals or water. There are many more other systems to do agriculture in Israel, and we are including also more and more robotics, automation in the process. And agriculture in Israel is really an example for many countries in the world, and we see more and more countries and people coming to us, to Israel, to ask for advice and also to ask for Israeli companies or for Israeli know-how to be shared with them. In this slide, you can see the ecosystem of agriculture in Israel. It is made of many hundreds of companies, hundreds of startups. You can see that it has many fields in itself, like crop protection, like post-harvest, pre-harvest, etc., etc. And we are sharing our know-how in agriculture, especially with developing countries for over 60 years. It is being done by Mashav. It is Israel International Aid Agency that works in Africa, in Latin America, in Central Asia, and the Far East. Another area of excellence is water. Now, just to tell you a few words about the water crisis. We are not leading only through one environmental crisis, which is climate crisis or climate change. There are several climate or several environmental crises today in addition to the climate crisis. One of them is water stress. And in this map, we see the projected situation of water stress in 2040. I can tell you that the situation today is not much different than what is projected in 18 or 17 years time from now. Now, look at the colors. The more reddish the areas are, the continents, the countries, it means that these countries are at the extreme high of water stress. And we can see countries that we wouldn't have imagined that they are likely to be prone to climate stress. If you look at the United States, for instance, we see that most of the United States is already under water stress, and it will be so more in the future. And we see the films, the videos, we read the news about the Colorado, the Mississippi River, and other great rivers and water reservoirs and aquifers which are getting drier in the United States. And this poses not only a huge problem for food security in the United States, but for the whole world, because all of us, we are all buying granary, we are all buying food supplies in the United States. And if food production in the United States is affected, it will have severe impacts for all the world. Now, have a look also at China. And you see that also China is suffering from water stress, especially in its big urbanic centers. The Indian subcontinent, which is home almost to 2 billion people, is severely affected by water stress. We see the Middle East, of course, Israel as part of it, Turkey, Iran, and Europe. And Europe is really suffering from water problems, from droughts, especially southern Europe, like Spain, Portugal, countries of the Balkan, Greece, Bulgaria, Italy, but also, surprisingly also countries in North Europe or Western Europe, like the Netherlands, Belgium, and Germany. I was in COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh, and I recall a meeting that I had with the president of Andalusia. This is a big region in Spain with about 9 or 10 million inhabitants. And he came to our pavilion and he told us that he wants to learn how Israel is coping with water shortages, water problems, what lessons we can share with Andalusia. And he was inviting Israeli companies and startups to come and to work in Andalusia. So we see a lot of demand. Also in the COP, we had many visitors as far as Vanuatu, the United States, Asia, China, etc., all coming to the Israeli pavilion to see what lessons they can take from Israel in the field of climate innovation. Now, Israel is really a world leader when it comes to water. We recycle more than 90% of our water today. It's more like 95% of the sewage water in Israel is recycled and then reused. Okay, this is very important. Now, you must understand that untreated water is a major source of methane, which is a very potent and strong greenhouse gas. So if we want to tackle climate change and to reduce emissions, we have also to deal a lot with water, starting with recycling and treating water. The sad reality today is that even if water is treated, sewage water is treated, most of it is being thrown away into rivers or in the land. Most of the sewage water is not treated and creates huge environmental problems in seas, in rivers, in lakes, etc. So one of Israel's successes is treating most of its sewage water. Now, this water is used again for agriculture in Israel. 50% of agriculture in Israel is irrigated by sewage water or treated sewage water. This is also a world record. Now, in lectures, I'm saying that I'm not proud that Israel is leader in that, and that Israel is leader in treating sewage water or using treated sewage water for agriculture. And people ask me, why you should be very proud. And I'm telling them that I would like to see every country in the world doing the same job as Israel. This is our only way to move forward and to avoid a catastrophe. Other areas of excellence in Israel when it comes to water are the prevention of water leaks. I do not know how much you are aware of, but big quantities of water are being lost due to leaks in water systems, especially urbanic water systems. In some places, it can be up to 50% of all the water. Now, remember that water is emissions. Water is greenhouse gases because we had to pump them, we had to shift them, we had to deliver them, and then we had to evacuate them. Now, every unused drop of water is emissions being lost for nothing. In Israel, we lose about 5% of our water in urbanic water systems. And believe me, this is not high-tech to prevent water losses. And all you need is just few systems which are digitalized, meters, smart meters at home, and also some technologies that can detect leaks from afar, from distance, infrared systems or others, and they are very much in use today. And we try to fix as much as possible and as quick as possible every leak of water in Israel. So this saves also lots of energy and lots of emissions. And in a world where water is becoming more and more scarce, it is very important. Just to say, to finish this, the part on water, to say that we are desalinating growing quantities of our water today. The total water economy of Israel, or the quantities that we use, are about 2 billion cubic meters of water per year. And already 30% of it, 600 million cubic meters, are desalinated water that we take from the sea. And the numbers are growing. In the next year, we will increase the capacity at least by 50%. And just to say that we are also supplying water to the Palestinians, either in Gaza or the West Bank, and to Jordan, knowing that they need water from Israel, desalinated water from Israel. So Israel is really becoming a regional hub also for our neighbors. The next slide is about energy, and there are fascinating innovations in Israel. So I'll just go and present a few of them. On the top left, what you can see is electric lane or electric road. And this road has infrastructure that loads the vehicles that run on it. Okay, so a vehicle that runs on this road needs a very small battery. This is especially useful for public transportation, for buses, etc. Instead of a very huge and heavy battery that takes hours to reload and then reuse again, the bus is being loaded on the lane, on the road, and it can run for days, even if you want. It is under experimentation in Israel and in few other countries in Europe, in Sweden, in Italy, and in other places. On the top right, you can see a very simple but genuine way of storing energy. What you can see here is panel solars that are on the soil, and below them you can see some tanks. Usually these are concrete tanks that the energy produced from the solar panels is used to concentrate air, which is stored in these tanks. And when we need energy, let's say nighttime when there is no sunlight, then the air is being released to propel a turbine that produces electricity. And this is much more useful than lithium batteries that after several uses is losing its capacity to store energy. There is no pollution in it, and it's very simple and can last for 4 years. On the right below, you can see another device that produces energy from sea wave by a company called the EcoWave. If you have a chance to visit the Jaffa port in Israel, then you will see an experimental device there. I've been there yesterday in Jaffa, just rolling with my wife. The winter wasn't very cold. It's not very cold these days, so it was really nice to scroll them. And we saw these devices, and they are very efficient. They can be installed mostly in ports where you have already some infrastructure to attach them to it. And they are being used today in countries like Portugal, and there is a great growing interest in this device. Below left, you see one of the biggest solar fields in Israel, Ashalim in the Negev, which produce 250 megawatts of electricity. So there is in the middle, there is a kind of a beacon that today you can see from miles. And there are many, many more Israeli companies and startups in the field of energy, energy efficiency, energy, just every aspect of it. Some of the biggest companies in the world in the field of renewable energies, or some of the biggest projects in the world are done by Israeli companies. Doral, for instance, an Israeli company, builds the biggest solar field in the United States these days. There are companies that deal with hydrogen. In COP27, an Israeli company signed an agreement with a Moroccan company to produce hydrogen in Morocco that by solar energy that will be shipped to Europe. So we see more and more also international collaborations in the field of energy. The fourth area where Israel is really good and is excellent is alternative proteins. Now, what are alternative proteins? These are proteins which are produced in laboratory. And they can be produced in different methods. Some of them are cultured meat or cultured chicken or cultured seafood. Means that you take tissues from an animal and you reproduce them in the lab. This is the real product itself. The prices of alternative proteins are going down and down in a dramatic way. So cultured meat is one way. Another way is to produce alternative proteins is by fermentation. You take bacteria, you modify them in order that they will produce for you the proteins that you want to. For instance, there is a company called Dream Milk in Israel that produces real cow's milk, but in the lab from bacteria. And they are now constructing their first factory in Denmark, a leading country in the production of cow's milk in the world. And this factory by itself will produce milk equivalent to 50,000 cows. Can you imagine how much emissions are being saved only by one installation like that? And the third way to produce alternative proteins is just to take proteins which are vegan, like hummus, like beans, etc., and to work on them so they will mimic in their texture, in their taste, meat, chicken, seafood, fish, etc. And you see more and more of these proteins now. Now, Israel is the second most advanced country in the world when it comes to alternative proteins. Second in the development and research, and second in terms of attracting investment, second only to the United States. And this is a huge market for the future. Not only that it will save billions of tons of CO2 and other emissions that are being emitted today from the livestock industry, which is a major source of the climate crisis. Livestock industry is a major source And if we can replace it by healthy, cheap, secure alternatives, then we are doing something very good for our future. And not only we will reduce emissions, we will increase food security. And just remember, bear in mind that there are still 3 billion people in the world that are undernourished and 1 billion people that suffers from hunger. About 10,000 people at minimum die every day from starvation because they do not eat enough. And we see what's happening today in the Horn of Africa, in Somalia, in Ethiopia, in Kenya. People are dying in the tens of thousands because of drought, because of climate change. And this phenomenon is about to grow because the pressure on the land, the pressure on agricultural production is going to increase with climate change, desertification, lack of water, the biodiversity crisis, and more and more. So this is one of the biggest promises Israel is offering to the world, alternative proteins. Now, the last point, maybe one before the last, is what we call nature-based solutions. And here we can see an area in the Galilee, north of Israel, before it was reforested on the left and after it was reforested. Now, forests are under a heavy attack by climate change. We know forests are being burned. We see it in Alaska, in Canada, in Siberia, in Australia. Forests are suffering from insect attacks and more and more. Now, Israel has a large and vast experience with forests in semi-arid areas. And the world, many parts of the world are becoming hotter and semi-arid. So this is a very valuable experience to the whole world. And the point that I wanted to mention, that I said one before the last, so I'm coming now to the last, is that I didn't mention, or I do not have a slide to share with you, is carbon capture and storage. We see in that an amazing opportunity to answer climate change, and it opens also big possibilities in a common for the economy. And there are apparently dozens of startups in Israel that already do carbon capture and storage. Some of them via nature-based solutions, others are doing it technologically. Some of the startups are aiming, for instance, at absorbing CO2 from the atmosphere and using it for other materials like cement, like plastic, like making aggregates, and more. And this slide, and with this slide, I will close my presentation and be happy to answer your questions, is the slide where when we signed the Abraham Accords with Bahrain and the United Arab Emirates. This really opened a new age in the Middle East. And we are working today closely with our neighbors in the Middle East, with Morocco, Bahrain. Actually, these days in the Gulf, today there is a meeting of Negev Forum, which brings together 6 countries, 4 of them Arab countries, the United States and Israel, and we see big possibilities of cooperating together. We are advancing the notion that we must create a regional climate resilience in the Middle East. It is not enough that Israel will be resilient to climate change, or any other country, regardless of its capacity or name in the Middle East, will be resilient to climate change, but other countries will be vulnerable. It cannot go like that. We really have to work together and create a resilience which is regionally, that every country is resilient to climate change. And in that way, we can secure the stability and the prosperity of the region as a whole and prevent problems like political instability, economic collapse, waves of immigrants in the Middle East and from the Middle East to other places. And to achieve that, we need also the aid of the international community, of the European Union, the United States, and also other stakeholders like the United Nations to make this happen and to invest in regional adaptation in the Middle East. So I'll just say that finally everything is in our hands. Whatever we do, we all have a responsibility for the climate change. We all have responsibility for finding solutions and doing our utmost to protect our climate, the nature, to protect the biodiversity, and just to make the world a better place. So I stop here. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very, very much, Gideon. Really comprehensive and fascinating, quick overview of climate innovation, and I stand corrected, climate tech. By the way, I see we're drinking from the same IKEA glasses. It's practically required here. Glass, of course. Wow, we have so many questions. There's a dozen questions in the feature, and other people asked in the chat feature. So let's just try to do some quickly here. First of all, several of them relate to desalination and the questions of what about the intensive energy it costs to desalinate? And the other question, which I don't know how well equipped you are, but I have an answer, is what about the effluent? What do we do with all the salt that comes out? How does that not damage the environment? If you could express that.
Sure. This is a very good question, and it bothers us. I can't say that it doesn't bother us, yes? And we are trying to understand and to research what will be the long-term effects of the brine. This is the concentrated water with the salt. You know, usually you separate, in desalination, you separate the water to sweet water and more concentrated salty water, which is about half-half. We do not know yet the effects, but as far as the quantities are small, the damage is not supposed to be big. Now, about the energy needed, it is a good challenge for us, and we think that if we can make the energy from renewable sources, or that we will be able to offset the energy which is used for desalinating water, then we will probably have a more holistic solution to that. But it is not that we have the answers yet to that, and we need to work on desalination with renewable energies, and also to understand the long-term effects of the brine on the natural systems.
Okay, I would just say slightly more optimistically that our scientists have been studying the brine and the effects in the Mediterranean Sea for what, a decade now. We've been desalinating heavily, and so far we don't see any major negative effects. I know people don't believe that, but that's, you know, we're still waiting, but we're cautiously optimistic that there really will be no negative effects from this. And certainly in an arid world, you know, some negative effects probably have to be accepted. But okay, that was about climate change. A lot of discussion and questions about plant-based diets, and I think you pretty much covered that. You talked about protein alternatives, but obviously switching to plant-based diets achieves the same thing as all of us who still need, you know, animal protein, but it can be grown in a lab. Is there anything else you want to say about how important the whole concept is?
Yes, of course. I mean, if you look how much from the world terrestrial surface is being used for livestock, it's huge. It's huge. 70% of all land which is used for agriculture is used to grow livestock or their feed, 70%. Now, we human took almost 40% of the world for agriculture. So make the calculation yourself and see how much of the world is dedicated for livestock. Now, imagine that you can reduce it, okay? Not eliminate it, but reduce it. We will give nature a chance for rehabilitation. We will give nature a chance to become sink of CO2, to absorb CO2 and to stock it into forests, into wetlands, into peatlands, etc. So our diets are extremely important in that direction. And we see today more and more UN reports tackling this point. It is a sensitive point. People do not want to talk about the diet or what we put on our plates. But I think that there is no other way to avoid it. We cannot avoid it. We must speak about it and find the solutions, and the solutions are there. And I think that, at least people can reduce the amount of meat or red meat that they use, or we do not need to eat 3 times a day meat to sustain our body or our dietary needs. So we must understand that. Also, another aspect which usually people do not pay attention to is that there is a global market of grains today, and grains are used to feed livestock. Okay, so if we grow cows or sheep, and these animals are eating grains, soybeans, maize, etc., it means that there is a higher demand for these products. And when the price goes up, it goes up also for the very poor people in Africa and other places. It makes for them livelihood more difficult. So we have also to understand this point and see that there are many advantages to shift into more plant-based nutrition, and to develop large-scale alternative proteins as another alternative for our nutrition.
Great, thank you. Listen, I want to make a point. There was also a question about it, though. You used as one of your examples forestry and the importance of forests in fighting climate change. And on a global level, that is true. Forests, and especially tropical forests, rainforests, are incredible places of carbon sinks, as they sequester a lot of carbon. They're crucial for helping reduce climate emissions. But I don't know how familiar you are. We're very critical of afforestation efforts of the Karen Kayemet, the Jewish National Fund here. We think, and there was a question about, are they still planting the wrong trees in the wrong places? And the answer is they are still planting. We believe espionage policy, and we have a policy paper on this, and promo, we have a webinar on the evening of February 5th. That's Erev Tu B'Shvat, when traditionally it's like a Zionist commandment to plant a tree in Israel. We believe that Israel is afforested enough. In other words, you showed a picture from the pre-state era and the way it looks later being afforested. That's fine. We don't want to rip down any forests, but we think in the land of Israel, the places that are not yet forested are high value biodiversity areas, Mediterranean scrubland called Bata, most of it. And there are other places, and there are other ways to sequester carbon in habitats. The savanna itself, the grasslands, the scrubland called Bata, also sequester a lot of carbon, and especially our wetlands rewilding process. Wetlands per dunam are more efficient than any other habitats on Earth except tropical rainforests in storing carbon. So in land-wise, it's going to be small amount, but carbon storage is going to be very crucial for wetlands rewilding. And in terms of forests, I mean, it's good that a lot of Israel has been forested over the last century, but we feel we're done. And Kakal doesn't, and they're still planting trees, and they're still planting the pine trees. And pine trees have been a disaster here, and they need to be stopped altogether, not just diversified. Anyway, that was SPNI's 2 cents on climate change. Alon Rothschild, our director of biodiversity and the author of the 2018 report on afforestation, will be with us for this webinar in, I guess, a month. Or a little less. So thank you. And more questions here. A bunch of people ask, can we get a copy of your presentation? Sure. And people want to...
You have it and you can share it with them.
Great. Okay. We will be able to do that. So people want some more details on those companies that you mentioned that they're in there. And if we have any other questions, Gideon, I'll get back to you if people have specific things. I mean, there are lots of questions here. Our friend Wendy asks, and I'll take an answer and I'll answer that. She asked about, she's very happy. Wendy's a supporter. She was just in Israel recently with our mission. She's so happy about Israel's climate change innovation. She asked, how can we in the US and Canada and elsewhere help to get this message out to people? I would say by supporting SPNI and our work, being an ambassador in your own community, inviting us when we come abroad, and even in your own place, becoming educated about what's going on in Israel, and spreading the word that way. Do you have any other thoughts on that, Gideon?
Yes, I think that one should learn more about climate innovation in Israel and its potential. We have written a few documents, and there is much more being written about it. But there is even a non-governmental organization called Planetech, which produces reports about climate change, or climate change innovation in Israel. You can find, if you Google, you can find a report called The State of Climate Innovation in Israel, 2022, and share this, the link with the participant. It is a very good report. They have also a website, a very good website, where you can learn a lot on climate innovation, startups, etc. All by all, there are about 1,300 companies and startups in Israel that are dealing in climate change. Okay, it can be water, energy.
How many did you say? What's the number?
1,300.
1,300, wow.
Yeah. 1,300.
Okay.
And the numbers are growing more and more. I can tell you that more and more entrepreneurs in Israel or startups are moving into the field of climate change. More and more. I get phone calls on a weekly basis from startupists in Israel sharing with me their ideas, their know-how, asking for help, for connections, etc. So I'm very much exposed to the scenery of climate innovation in Israel and to the startups. It's really a very vibrating ecosystem of doing businesses and doing good to the world. And we see also more and more investment is moving in. Just the recent one, the most recent one was the decision of the Ministry of Energy to develop storage capacities, energy storage capacities, with two of the leading universities in Israel, Bar Ilan and the Technion. And they were putting together in this plan 130 million shekels. In Israeli terms, it's quite a substantive amount of money. But the numbers are growing, the numbers and investments are growing in Israel, in Israeli startups and companies, because people understand also the potential. But as I was mentioning before, we see that people are moving, startupists, people, entrepreneurs are moving into the field because they feel that they have a mission there and that they can contribute to, bluntly saying, saving our planet, making a better place for our children. I mean, this is the situation of climate change. Climate change is not just another subject. It is the biggest crisis facing humanity today, maybe the biggest one since the Mabul, the big flood. As humanity, as individuals, as companies, as governments and states, we have to do everything to prevent it. And we see more and more good people moving into it and coming with ideas. There is a startup called High Hopes, okay? They are aiming to release 3 million balloons into the air and to sequester CO2 on the level of about 13 kilometers high in the atmosphere, to sequester billions of millions of tons of CO2 and to bring it down to Earth, to use it in to sequester it or to, to save it in safe places. And they are moving, and there are many, many more startups in that direction. And we see also the investment. The investment is following. And I'm also in touch with investors, and they tell me what they do. And they are doing good things. So that's why I'm also optimistic. I see the difficulties and dangers of climate change, but I see also how responses and how answers are being developed. And I'm sure that Israel has a key role to play in that, a key role to play in giving, in supplying practical solutions to the biggest problem humanity ever faced. This is my personal conviction. And as a professional person, I see it on a daily basis.
Wow. I mean, that was very depressing beginning of that answer. And then it got very inspiring towards the end. It is a huge crisis. It's almost psychologically impossible to grasp. But when you break it down and look at the possible solutions, it looks like humanity and Israel is one of the leaders in that is finding the ways to begin to reverse the trend. Let's hope. I kind of feel I want to end on that. There's a couple minutes left, and there's a lot of questions we haven't got to, and I'm sorry. And if you want to write us and we can answer them or get answers from Gideon. But one thing I do want to mention is people asked about, and you mentioned, and we're very proud of the cooperation with the Abraham Accord countries. But there was a question about any cooperation with Palestine and Jordan. And I would just say, especially in terms of water, I give a shout out. We work not closely, but we have connections professionally with both the Arava Institute and EcoPeace that was mentioned on the chat. And on our own, we're one of our wetlands rewilding projects at Kfar Rupin on the Jordan River. We really hope, and there's much progress being made towards making that a cross-border wetland with Jordan. If that succeeds, we may be able to go down the Jordan River south of the Jordanian border and do it in the Palestinian territories as well. But these are dreams and hopes, and we're working towards them.
They are happening, Jay. In COP27,
okay.
For instance, we have signed an MOU with Jordan, the United Arab Emirates, in the presence of John Kerry, of a plan or program called Prosperity Blue and Green, in which Israel will supply Jordan 200 million cubic meter of desalinated water and get 600 megawatt of electricity from solar power in Jordan. Jordan is bigger than Israel, has more sunshine, and can supply Israel with that. With the Palestinians also, things are moving. There is a greater supply of water. We want to increase our cooperation with them. We also signed a declaration of intent with Jordan to rehabilitate the southern part of the Jordan River. So things are moving. And I think also, from what I'm seeing and witnessing, and I'm in many regional fora today and meeting many of our neighbors, I see a great interest for cooperation with Israel, and people understand that there is something to do together, and that the threat of climate change forces us to work together. I mean, just let me finish by one sentence, okay?
Please.
I'm in the last 3 years, I'm deeply involved in a regional initiative called the Cypriot Initiative for Climate Change in the Eastern Mediterranean and the Middle East. And it's a regional framework for cooperation on climate change, where hundreds of scientists from all countries were working together in 13 different working groups. And in Sharm el-Sheikh, in COP27, for the first time, there was a meeting of this initiative on a level of heads of states. And in one room, not very big, you could see sitting together the prime ministers of the Palestinian Authority, of Jordan, of Greece, of Lebanon, the presidents of Egypt, of Iraq, ministers from Oman, from Israel, all sitting together and talking about the problems of climate change. It means that things are shifting, and we really have to push them, to give them more energy to move into the right direction.
Wow. Amazing. Amazing. Thank you so much. People are thanking you all over the place on the chats. I don't know if I have a chance to look at them. Miriam Cantor from Los Angeles said this has been one of our best webinars, and we've had over 100. And she said that this has been the most hopeful webinar we've had. So I think that is a good way to end. There's still many more questions. Sorry we didn't get to them. A quick shout out to Marilyn Nerrill. I don't know if you're Yonatan's wife or mom, but the Interfaith Center for Sustainability was written about in the chat, has been following them for a long time. They do a lot of stuff with the interfaith view of climate change. And I know there was an event that happened during COP in London, and religion has been such a divisive thing in the Middle East, especially, that if it can come together to help fight climate change, that would be a very hopeful, very, very hopeful development as well. So anyway, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us from a couple or three different continents and from all over the world. Really, we had over 140 people here, still have over 140 people on listening. We're past the hour, 100 people over now. And we thank you very, very much, Gideon. I reserve the right to ask you to do this again, towards the end of the year or something, because, this will be online. It's recorded. It'll be online right tomorrow on our website, so people can watch it. But I'm sure there'll be updates, maybe after the next COP 27, which is also in this neck of the woods. So anyway, thank you very, very much. Appreciate it. Have a good night and a good morning and afternoon to everybody else around the globe. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, David Amichai, for the back office work here. Signing off, Laila Tov from Tel Aviv. Bye-bye.